let me just introduce myself. My name is Weza Matomane, but for today, you can call me Weza that guy. But every time you say it, you have to use the voice. It must be epic, just like I did right there, right? So you're like, hey, that was a good MC. What was his name again? Weza that guy. You probably have seen or heard me on radio or TV. I'm the guy who's always making sure that you get that deal or the other one. And of course, the interesting thing is, do I speak like that every day? That's also the weird part, right? Like, do I speak like this every single day? Well, I probably don't, but I did when I was a kid. I remember once walking into fresh fruit and veg with my aunt and saying something like, try our bananas for just R9.99. And my aunt was like, Aibo, don't know, Aibo. And it was, of course, the beginning of great things. And since then, you know, the world has really opened up for me in the voiceover space. But voiceovers is not all I do. I'm actually quite closely related with things tech savvy as well, because I studied chemical engineering at the University of Pretoria, which is like a total polar opposite to what I get to do on the daily basis. But in that, I also now lead a team of really bright minds. We have an artificial intelligence company that deals in advertising on the internet and so on. So this, especially talking tech, talking how technology, especially spaces like e-commerce, have made things a whole lot better and a whole lot simpler, is definitely something that is well within my forte. So I'm looking forward to this conversation that we're going to be able to have today as well. Let me actually run you through some of the housekeeping procedures that we can all familiarize ourselves with. You'll have a chat box. I'm sure 2020 and 2021 has taught you how to use that quite a lot these days. And in there, I want you to be able to ask questions as the day progresses. So if you have anything that comes up that would make this conversation a whole lot more lively, or just something that you'd like to ask, because we've got such great experts here with us, please feel free to use that space and write your message or question and comment right there. We will then, at a later stage, have a Q&A session where you can get to ask those questions. And in this way, we can make this whole thing a whole lot more interactive. A couple of you, if you are brave enough to raise your hand and actually come onto the platform and ask your questions live, well, we might just see if there's an opportunity for that too, depending on how the time allows us closer to the end of the program. So for that, there's the raise hand option. But the one I strongly recommend is just typing in your question and comment right there in our chat box. And later on, we'll get to ask some of those questions, time permitting as well. So please make sure that you utilize that as much as you can. Besides that, we just, of course, reminding all our panelists to be on mute when you are not having a conversation, in case your child comes in at the back and asks for a juice. You don't want that coming onto the platform. So make sure to be on mute when you're not on the conversation. It actually also just makes sure, it actually enables the person speaking to also speak without any disturbance as well. So this panel discussion is being facilitated to increase awareness about the role that technology plays in modernizing the retail industry. Our panelists will discuss how efforts from ICT service providers have enabled retail industry to surge and revolutionize itself, despite the setbacks that we faced because of the pandemic. And we all know how the pandemic has really impacted so much of what we know as normal. And we've all had to adapt to what is now the new normal. In fact, this particular webinar would have probably just been a seminar, and we would have all been sitting in one space and one setting, and now we've had to adapt. So technology clearly has had a huge role to play in us adapting and adapting faster. Some of my panelists include the following. First up, we've got Boyd Cheslos. So Boyd is the Chief Business Officer, or CBO, of Liquid Intelligent Technologies, South Africa. The ICT industry, as we know it, is a fast-paced industry. It has, it really requires a lot of certain skills, especially things like being adaptable and leading in a rapidly evolving economy. It is this experience and exposure in ICT that has provided Boyd with the exceptional knowledge that he has and his ways, of course, of being able to tackle on really, really challenging environments with a diverse team and still manage to deliver on the result. Boyd has a strong track record of delivering through and managing large teams, as I mentioned just earlier. And all of this, of course, has been something that is complemented with his qualifications, one of which is Executive Advanced Management Program at the Harvard Business School in Boston, USA. Our next panelist is Mark Walker, the Associate Vice President of Sub-Saharan Africa of the IDC. Mark Walker currently leads the vertical market insights and research and consulting practice in the IDC MEA. He has over 25 years of experience in the information technology and the communications industry, which is something absolutely fantastic. In his position at the IDC, Walker is responsible for leading consulting, researching, and analysis of technology markets across the Middle East, Africa, and Turkey, along with the analysis of the large socio-economic environment in which these markets exist. As a large portion of his research that is conducted or that is conducted by the IDC MEA, one of the primary nature is acquiring firsthand all of the knowledge required, of course, to really thrive, especially when it comes to technology in these regions as well. Just fast forwarding to the last part of his resume, he frequently consults on strategic issues, including policy formation, market opportunity assessment, strategic planning, distribution, and partnership initiatives, and corporate situations facing technology suppliers and users in emerging markets. Next up, and the last of our contributors for today, is the Chief Marketing Officer at Metacom, which is Marius Visser. Marius has actively been involved in the development and delivery of innovative solutions to the IT and telecom industries for more than 25 years. Looks like 25 is a number that is a key number in terms of our panelists today. You know, everyone has 25 years and more within their space. So I'm sure we've got a lot of wealth of knowledge that's going to come here today. During this time, Marius has been responsible for the development and a deployment of solutions ranging from managing telephony, transaction platforms, managed Wi-Fi, SDA, WAN, and more across numerous countries. He has a firm belief in creating value through innovation. And that is something that we can look forward to. So that's our panelists. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm certainly looking forward to what you guys are here to bring today. Boyd, I'd like to kick off with you and for you to just give us a bit of a high level, first of all, more like an introduction or just warming us up to our conversation today. Paint the picture of the market to us. And also, of course, just Liquid's positioning when it comes to it all.
Thanks, Weza. I'm sure you don't mind if I don't try and say your name in that deep voice. I don't have those skill sets, but thanks, and welcome to everybody. I think for me, if we look at retail in general, I think this pandemic has accelerated the world and its adoption of technology and how people do business. Now, I look at it almost, the first phase was what I call the retail scurry, where you have businesses that are not prevalent in an omni-channel environment. They're traditional bricks and mortar, and suddenly one's exposed to create new markets. And those that haven't really been close to the fourth industrial revolution and looking at the role that technology plays in their business, I guess I left a little bit compromised. But for avoidance of doubt, the technology is not about connectivity. I think connectivity is critical, and connectivity is important for an organization to operate and to function. And CTOs and CIOs and CEOs historically were really looking about how technology enabled their business for their own usage and their own purpose. However, the pandemic forced us to shift the mindset to how do we enable customers? And that's not about connectivity. That's really about the large adoption of cloud-based technologies. And I'm sure we'll chat a little bit more about that. I think from a Liquid perspective, we've obviously gone through a significant transformation as a group, now called Liquid Intelligent Technologies. And really what we've done is we have built on this significant asset that we've built up from a connectivity perspective right across Africa. Some of you may know we've got approximately 100,000 kilometers worth of fiber across the continent, active in 13 countries with significant data center assets and continuing to grow. But for us, the connectivity was just the means to the end. And really what we needed to focus on was how do we work with different industries, different verticals, to ensure that we create a consultative framework, not a transactional one. And that consultative framework then allows us to really add value to a retail environment or a pharmaceutical environment or logistics, supply chain, etc. So for us, really what's important is that the role that technology plays in this retail sector is vital. It's not about connectivity. I think connectivity is I'm not going to say like electricity, it's like water, but maybe even that's sort of a good analogy. But I guess it's really about connectivity is there. We need to make certain that the plumbing operates. But our CROs and our CTOs in South Africa and globally are saying, how do I look to migrate my business from a very physical premise-based environment into a cloud-based environment? And that's really from a Liquid perspective, the value that we add in that context. I'm going to pause there because I know that we could go in for another hour or so on that, but I'm sure we'll pick some of that up a little bit later.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot for that, Boyd. So in fact, let's just kick off the actual interchange and conversation. You just mentioned that connectivity is not like it's not like electricity, it's more like water. And I think that probably talks to load shedding versus having water every single day. Like water has become so crucial. And of course, electricity is something that is crucial, but sometimes here in South Africa, it's a negotiation. But connectivity itself, especially for the consumer and for the business, being able to connect and making sure that you have the ability to sell and to connect to people, even if the distance is far. Those things have now become so much more important than before, e-commerce and so on. Just highlight to me exactly what like if you had to put it in your own words, when it comes to that connectivity and really just the essentialness of it now versus what it was in the past.
So where's connectivity has always been essential. It is essential today, and it'll continue to be essential. For us, we will continue to expand our connectivity assets to ensure that any customer and any entity can connect anywhere to operate their business. So whilst it's essential, for me, the focus for business needs to shift away from pure connectivity to say, how do I, in the retail space, how do I de-risk my operating model? And if we look at it, the pandemic was one of those hopefully once in a lifetime events that fundamentally sped up the adoption of digital technologies by businesses globally. And what you're seeing is that the laggards that were heavily invested into physical infrastructure, everything based on prem, really struggled to move into this omni-channel online environment. And you've got to look at it in terms of enterprise and SME, because from an SME perspective in the small medium business, they don't have the scale to fundamentally create the high levels of redundancy that enterprises do. So I think that was the first item. The second for me, if you look in a local context, the unfortunate riots that took place across the country, primarily in KwaZulu-Natal, further emphasized the notion that adoption of new technologies, and particularly moving off-prem. A lot of people think moving to the cloud is I take what I've got physically and I put it in the cloud. I guess that at a very basic level, at a technology level, is what you do. But for me, I call it cloud squared. Now, what value do you achieve by ensuring you have a strong digital migration strategy? And for me, that means that you start interacting with the customer very differently. So when you have power outages, when you have things like point of sale downtimes, you still have the ability to maintain your inventory. You still have the ability to maintain an understanding of your supply chain, your DC, as well as in terms of customer data, you can still maintain that. So for me, this adoption of moving to off-prem cloud-based digital migration strategies for retail is really a critical strategy. And they coexist. You know, having an online environment and having a physical environment, you know, we're seeing a resurgence in many areas in physical and bricks and mortar, because post-pandemic, customers are looking for this experiential relationship with retail. You know, we've shopped online for 18 months, but you know, we need to have that experiential component. So this notion of coexistence of physical and online, and I think someone quoted it as phygital, which is physical and digital. So for me, connectivity is important, but we have to focus on how do we arm a CIO and CTO to focus on the customer journey as opposed to just enabling the business so that I can download a report and I've got connectivity. So it's always important, but I think adoption of digital migration strategies are far more important.
Wow, that's quite interesting. And you've also taught us a new word. Say that word again. It's what? It's
not my word, but I've heard it a couple of times. It's called phygital, which is the physical and digital, and I guess it's this coexistence of saying, hey, not every customer wants to operate online, and not every customer wants to go into a shopping mall. So how do we create this symbiosis between the two and ensure that a customer can transact anywhere in the business and still have access to their data and the purchasing of their
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Boyd. Okay, so we've learned a new word, phygital, and that's what we need to be creating, more phygital spaces where we can actually connect our digital space and digital offering, of course, also to that the physical spaces. So physical meets digital, and that's phygital. All right. So we learn something new every day. So now we have the perspective from a tech service provider. And that's why I want to just bring Marius into this conversation. Now, Marius, you're part of the retail industry. What have you noticed, especially looking at the sector from a South African viewpoint, keeping in mind the growth of e-commerce in the country?
Thank you very much, Weza. Yeah, it's interesting to listen to that word because it certainly does resonate with some of the experiences we have. Metacom at heart is an innovation and a technology company with a strong focus on retail, and even more so on physical presence and wide area networks on retail. And yeah, we've seen a lot of what Boyd has alluded to play out in the market space over the last 18 months. There's no doubt that companies that basically embraced digital migration strategies and that had sound e-commerce strategies have managed to weather the storm of the last 18 months a lot better than other companies. So technology plays a key role, and the reality is in terms of where we are at now, and maybe in Europe we see a bit more of that. COVID, certainly in spite of vaccinations, is not behind us. It is something that will continue to be with us for some time to come. And innovation and technology is absolutely key in dealing with the challenges that the market has. It's important to note, however, that e-commerce was growing strong and fast well before COVID. And it will continue to grow strong and well after COVID. There's expectation that in South Africa, there'll be annual year-on-year growth of up to 11% in e-commerce, and that's not directly related to COVID. So all companies, all retail companies have to take serious consideration of how to build digitalization and e-commerce into their roadmaps. And we are seeing that with our engagement with our various customers. The impact of COVID has probably been to bring forward, as Boyd alluded to, some of the migration strategies. Some reports say up to 5 years digitalization has been brought forward because of COVID. So there's a couple of key things that we see in the market that underpins the strategies of our retailers. And most of it relates to some of the things Boyd alluded to, that customer journey, being able to manage the customer experience both through bricks and mortar and the online experience. Some estimates are that customers nowadays look at product up to 4 times before they actually buy. So you have a typical example of a customer going into a brick and mortar store, trying something out, going back, checking it out on 3 or 4 different sites, finding the best price, and then buying online. And very often, and this is a trend that retailers look at as well, is buying online and actually picking up in stores. And that also relates to the convenience factor that's becoming more and more important. Customers have new spending habits. They move away from shopping malls, or in European terms, high streets, and they want to move to picking up in more convenient, localized environments. We see retailers moving into a more distributed footprint in order to enable that. Retailers with a large footprint spread across geographically across South Africa is benefiting from that access. But then the other thing that Boyd mentioned that goes along with what I've just said is the omni-channel requirement. So if the actual physical purchase is a store-based experience, which is then repeated online, it's equally important to look at it further than that. So in other words, look at something that you're passionate about, the social media element of it, being able to communicate to the client across multiple platforms and enabling the easiest and the most convenient way for them to procure that and for them to actually get access to the product after they have actually procured it. So very important new trends that we see is we see our retailers looking at things like mobile, looking at multiple communication channels, things like video, retail, video and audio into the retail outlet, but then also very important, enabling all of that when the consumer is inside a physical environment. So consumer would walk into a retail outlet and across the physical infrastructure, which Boyd says is like water that has to be there, being able to access those online services and those cloud-based services securely and efficiently to access the various services. So that whole omni-channel experience and ease of actually interacting with the product or service and the security and trust that they can rely on actually picking up the product that they've procured is becoming more and more important. And I'd be remiss to not add that all of this relates to the actual distributed footprint of retail and actually accessing the service by the customer. But equally important is the retailer's back-end services, their ability to have things like work from home during this difficult time to ensure that they actually can support clients no longer in pure retail hours, but 24/7. And probably the biggest challenge in the retail world right now is managing your supply chain effectively and being sure that you can actually supply product, which right now globally is the single biggest challenge facing retail. So from our perspective, we've seen these underpinning trends play out in a number of our retail customers. We've seen many of them adapt already, some with great success. And yeah, it's clear that the companies that embrace these trends and ensure that they're positioned for e-commerce and omni-channel and good quality integrated supply chain will weather the continued existence of COVID a lot better than others.
Thanks a lot for that, Marius. Now, let's try to figure this out. You know, Boyd spoke earlier about the importance of customer centricity and a customer centric approach when innovating and coming up with your e-commerce models and retail solutions, especially using tech to still connect with people and still manage to enable, you know, that retail environment. But how important is that in the South African context? Who are we really solving the problem for? When you look at the population of South Africa, how many of our people are the tech savvy people? How many of our people are going to be utilizing the services? So I want you to kind of compare South Africa to, let's say, the United States, to the United Kingdom, and maybe even to the Asian markets, and say, you know, how is everything evolving? Because you mentioned earlier that, you know, e-commerce has been growing even before COVID, even here locally. So talk us through that. I know that you currently, you know, are not just in the country, but in fact you're doing more than just South Africa. So you've got that global perspective. So tell me from a global perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Wes. It's quite interesting. I mean, when we think of South Africa, you often think that we are way behind the rest of the world as far as e-commerce is concerned, and that's not entirely true. I think in terms of percentage of retail spend, South Africa has been ranked at something like number 37 in the world, in front of some of the European countries in terms of spend. In 2021, just about 4% of the total retail spend in South Africa was already e-com. So South Africa is by no means fresh out of the blocks as far as e-commerce is concerned. I think most retailers will attest that South Africa, even more than some European countries, have completely embraced things like Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and so there definitely is a strong e-commerce client base in South Africa already. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a projection of that growing 11% year on year. But I do think it's important to understand that there are differences. I mean, there's differences even in Europe. If you look at the UK, 20% of the entire retail spend is actually e-commerce based. Whereas you look at some other countries in Europe, it might be as low as 10% or 8%. So there isn't such a thing as a homogeneous e-commerce Europe or the rest of the world. So South Africa, and what I'm driving at that is South Africa does have unique circumstances and unique challenges, and not all industries or all sectors will do equally well in e-commerce in South Africa. I think some of the main differences would include things like mobility. So certainly in South Africa, mobile access and the distribution of mobile access is significantly higher percentage-wise than what you would expect elsewhere. And therefore, e-commerce is particularly important. And you see that drive in some of the retailers in South Africa already, where they are focusing on taking commerce through the mobile platforms and driving that harder, even than they are some of the normal channels. Then I think questions around trust and delivery and payment is very, very big in South Africa. And that also lends itself well to some of the comments that we made earlier around buy online, pick up in store, having access to the actual product locally. Even though we have work from home, there's a big fear in e-commerce still that you can't actually guarantee that you're at home when products are delivered, etc. So that drive towards picking up at your local retail store close by is a big deal breaker. And then, of course, payment methods. There's been a lot of great progress in South Africa of late, and the security and the ease of payment is going to continue to be a key deal breaker for e-commerce in South Africa. So yes, I don't think South Africa by any means is a fresh market in terms of e-commerce just starting out. It's well established. It certainly is very much ready for continued opportunity and continued high growth. And I think there are a couple of unique elements, such as mobile, which which plays into e-commerce being rolled out slightly differently in South Africa than in the rest of the world.
Thanks for that, Marius. You know, the other thing that I think really contributes to it all is just the growth of everything, the growth of access to cell phones, access to the internet. All of these things play a role, especially if you start to zoom out from, let's say, the richest square mile in Africa, which is Sandton, and you start to zoom out and you're thinking Free State, and you're thinking the Northwest, and you're looking at Eastern Cape, and looking at areas that previously were areas that were seen as remote. I know that Liquid Intelligent Technologies, for instance, has been doing some work with the Department of Telecommunications to better even those areas, so that they can be known as connected areas and not remote areas anymore. So, areas like Mthatha, areas like Port Elizabeth, and even other areas within, spaces like the Northwest, Mahikeng, Rustenburg, Limpopo. There are areas in our country that once we can revitalize them and connect them more, then even the retail space just gets better enabled. I was in the Eastern Cape, for instance, and I tried to order something from Takealot, and I noticed that it's not going to be quite as convenient and quick as when I'm sitting in Sandton trying to do the same thing. So all of these play a role, and I think it is a multi-sectoral approach that will enable this to work and to grow even faster. It is not just from the internet perspective, not just from the e-commerce perspective and building your website, but then you need other service providers to support the innovations that have come about by having the likes of Takealots and Mr. Deliveries and others similar to that come through and help out with the mobility of making sure that something can go from retailer straight to consumer, and there's not a lot of inconveniences in between. And the quicker that time is, the better. Here in South Africa, when you order something online and it tells you that it's gonna be delivered in 2 days and it comes tomorrow, it's, wow, that was good, because you're thinking probably a week or something like that. But in America, the same time frame, they'll say, this is outrageous, so I can't get it today. And it's like, what? You want it today? But that's what technology can bring. It can bring that type of convenience, and people can get used to a certain level of service delivery that, of course, means that they can consume more because they know that they can get it today. So, for instance, if I'm thinking of getting a laptop now, right now, if I need it right now, I would need to go to a retail store. I wouldn't be able to rely on my e-commerce, like on any e-commerce, to give me something now. If I buy it now, to get it within the next 5 or 3 hours, it's almost unheard of if I'm going to order and I'm still going to get it today in South Africa. But in America, those type of things have become, their new normal in a way. So we have some distance to catch up, but it's already exciting what we've already done. When you look at things like the solutions like Rain, they've come with, their offering. And now I hear of people in the townships that say, I have Wi-Fi, and that's amazing, because that already is a step in the right direction for us in terms of growth as a country. And when it comes to that connectivity, if everyone is connected, then the solutions now can be built for everyone and with everyone in mind, and not just for the fortunate few. So thank you very much for those contributions. I want you to think of a couple of more things and come back with some extra insights. In fact, I want to just take this opportunity to remind our panelists, if you do want to just chip in or jump in right after another panelist has spoken and you just have something to add, if you have an idea while he's speaking, you can raise your hand. So if you click on the raise hand, then I will be able to just let you in and we can have a beautiful dialogue, because I think the interchange of ideas is what's going to make this a very fruitful conversation. So now moving from Marius over to Mark Walker. So I want to now talk about the industry perspective of the growth of e-commerce and the retail industry in South Africa. Now, Mark, coming to an industry perspective, what observations have you seen regarding the retailers refocusing their IT spend to better support DX and the retail DX infrastructure?
Thanks very much, Reza. And absolutely, there's been a huge change over the last couple of months and the last 2 years especially. Marius mentioned that there was an acceleration in spend on digital transformation. That is absolutely true. We've seen major budget revisions, major changes in how budgets are allocated, especially to enable transactions all over the place. And I think that's going to be the major area going forward. Retailers, in 2023, about 80% of retailers are expected to be contactless payments within the end of next year. We're looking at that, that'll result in about a 40% improvement in conversion rates and the retention of about 30% improvement of retention of customers. Also mentioned things like the glass pipelines and all the Omni channel environment and how that whole journey is getting tracked across the entire space right now. So, major changes across the board, they're going to keep on happening also in terms of the supply chain and partnering and data hubs, where data hubs are put together to basically allow for more innovation and also to basically lower the data access costs or acquisition costs for new customers. So a lot of changes coming through there, Reza, and I think that's going to continue as we go forward. It's just a building momentum as more people are connected and as more people become more reliant on online transactions, online payments, and online delivery. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. Now, I know that, the IDC has been involved in very many success stories. I mean, I was fortunate enough to do a voiceover for you guys a couple of moons ago, and it was talking about the story of Omar Rusks and how once upon a time, the country needed more commodities, local commodities to be made, and the call out was made. And here came this old lady who says, well, I make good rusks. And the IDC funded the idea. And, long story short, it's super successful and has been able to enable so many livelihoods. And of course, it's a proudly South African product that we can all be proud of. Talking about that and the IDC's focus right now, especially when it comes to digital and e-commerce offerings and things like that, is the IDC focusing on businesses or ideas or so that have these type of solutions as they bring it?
Reza, just a quick correction. The IDC I'm with is International Data Corporation, not the Industrial Development Corporation. So two things. One, I haven't got the money. And two, just because my surname's Walker doesn't mean I have the whiskey either. So just keep that in mind, okay? I think, guys, from an industry point of view, we do a lot of research and consulting work, IT specifically, to cover the retail sector, amongst the other sectors we do. And one of the key things that we see is this huge uptake of technology, the huge
It seems like Mark has just disconnected for a moment there, so we'll give him a moment to come back. But thank you so much for that wonderful save, Mark. So the IDC, guys, it's not that other IDC, it's another IDC. I want to lie, South Africa, there's very many IDCs, but this one is the right one. Eh? All right, great stuff. So I've been educated. I'm hoping that you have been too. But we literally just going to move from Mark and actually maybe come back to Marius and Boyd at the same time. Let's talk about the future. And I mean, the future in technology is so much different from the future in any other space, because if I could ask you to project the next 5 years, it might happen in 2, So talk to me about the next 2 years. What do you see from this space? What type of what type of developments can we anticipate from a South African perspective and maybe even from a global perspective too?
Okay, so Boyd, I'll take a stab first. So yeah, it's for us. I think the speed of digitalization and specifically cloud-based services around retail is just going to change the landscape significantly. What we're looking forward to is where our retailers build strong communities with their customers, where those customers can actually interact with that retailer in true omni-channel fashion. I don't honestly think brick and mortar is going out the window. I think it's becoming a core part of that omni-channel communication and conversation with clients. So we're looking forward to an environment where retailers build strong customer communities that can interact with them in their physical stores, online. They have access to video, audio content. They've got access to cloud-based service platforms where they can actually interact with that retail services and products effectively and efficiently. And where you can start using the benefit of all this data that's going to be collated in terms of building that community and strengthening that community and selling the right product to the right people. And I think what we're seeing now in the market is a strong drive towards that, whether that's in a physical bricks and mortar store or an online presence. And you know, you can look at virtually any of the retail sectors, and there will be strong elements of this and investment in this going forward over the next couple of years. And that strength in the retail communities is going to be key to their success. As I mentioned earlier, certainly, you know, based in Europe, there's no short-term end to the challenges that Corona is going to pose. We are going to see more and more challenges on that. And that strength that the retailers will build through those omni-channel communities is really what's going to carry them through and what's going to distinguish the really successful ones from the rest.
Fantastic stuff. Thanks for that contribution, Marius. Boyd, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I sort of take the discussion to a more practical level for some of our attendees. I think, you know, we mustn't get caught up in the notion of technology just for technology's sake. I think we have to say to ourselves, how do we ensure that we use the technology to create a better customer experience, to compete more effectively against your competitor that is next door to you, across the way from you? And how do we turn technology into utilizing it for differentiation? And I think that's the key for me, because if we're going to talk technology because it's important and everyone talks about technology, I think we've missed the boat. And there are a couple of key elements for me that I think are important. The one is that we've got to look to create personal experiences with our customers. But you can't do that in this multiple channel world. So I take maybe Marius Visser, he'll go into retail chain X, and he'll go into store number 1 in Cape Town, store number 2 in Johannesburg, store number 3 in Mafeking, and store number 5 in Richards Bay. And guess what? He may even go into Lagos and London and in Dar es Salaam. And if retailers are not tracking Marius's purchase behavior, if retailers are not tracking how Marius pays, if retailers are not tracking what Marius buys, the size of his basket, et cetera, and all the other data elements, I think all you're really going to do is provide technology just to transact. And for me, what digital migration actually means is that organizations start using data and big data. And it doesn't mean that big data sits in the domain of multinational retailers. I'm even talking a small, medium business. So if you look at our partnership with the hyperscalers, whether it be Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, Google, etc., one of the key things that those partnerships allow from a hyperscaling perspective is for small, medium business, large enterprise and multinationals to partner with these hyperscalers to start moving their analytics, their ERP, their reporting into a cloud-based environment. So if you remember in the beginning, we spoke about this digital migration, and yeah, part of it is about de-risking the physical infrastructure, but actually that's not what it's about for me. It's actually saying, how can I start tracking Marius's journey every time he transacts? Because by the way, when he went to Dar es Salaam, he didn't go into a store. He actually went into an online store and he bought something that was slightly different. So why did he go online? Why did he not go to the store? So the notion of collating this data allows one to understand the purchase behavior of the customer. The second thing it also does is it allows us to enable a better level of customer service to Marius. So Marius bought this item online in Dar es Salaam, but when he came back to Cape Town, he found that, I don't know, the belt didn't fit or a certain item of clothing didn't work. So he wanted to take it back to the store in Cape Town. Now, if we are not creating this large audience of big data, and we are not utilizing it to enhance the customer experience with the customer, don't waste your time on digital migration, because all you're doing is you're taking something from a physical and you're putting it into a digital world. So what we do from a Liquid perspective, we spend a lot of time consulting with our retail customers, our retail partners, and others, where we start saying, well, how do we enable this big data for you? How do we move from pure transactional to value add? And then how do we then take all of this and manage it for you? Technology, data center, the big data, etc. Why? Because you as the CEO, CXO, any C-suite employee, you have to focus on gaining market share against your competitor. And the more time you trying to figure the stuff out, someone else is doing it. So I think for me, that's really important. And what it allows for is, it allows for a personalized interaction in retail. A, to buy, but also B, from a customer experience perspective and a customer service perspective. And that's big for me. And if you're focusing on tech for tech, you're going to get caught out. You have to look at how do you compete to take market share. And every CIO I talk to, not just in retail, but across the landscape from a South Africa perspective, and I talk to leading CIOs every single day. For me, getting those insights are important. There's one message that's loud and clear. I don't want to focus on providing all this technology. Do it for me so I can use it effectively to gain market share. Back to you, Wizard.
Wow, that was such an amazing mouthful that was so insightful at the same time. So, Boyd, the question now is coming from a person asking about the space that small businesses can operate within all of this. Sometimes it might feel quite big and daunting when you're saying, don't talk tech for tech, let's talk big data and how do you utilize it. Now, let's try to make it practical for the small business owner that's on this platform right now. There was a question saying, what tools or digital measurements can small businesses put in place to ensure that customer satisfaction is always enhanced in the e-commerce space? And maybe not just customer satisfaction, but also market share and growth from small to becoming like a medium and maybe even growing further. If we try to now zoom in even more to highlight some of the tools that are actually quite beneficial, which tools would they be?
So Weza, I think for me, the first thing is that small, medium business mustn't be scared of adopting a digital migration framework. Digital migration is not for the large CapEx flush, large balance sheet organizations. The small medium business sector is probably far larger than any other sector in this country, and we have to work really aggressively to ensure that we help grow that sector. And from a lit perspective, we're spending a lot of time with our partners, for example, Microsoft, saying, what tools can we provide to that SMB environment that are cloud-based, that give them access to enterprise-grade solutions? So, for example, ERP. I think that's really important that a small, medium business has access to an ERP system. And it doesn't mean you have to go and buy one of the large multinational on-prem institutional ERP systems. It's about working with these cloud-based hyperscalers. The second is about making certain that you can track your inventory. You can ensure that, when you were in Tata and you couldn't get a particular item, why not? I think a retailer needs to be able to track that inventory and say, hang on a second, I can't get it to you today, but I know that I've got inventory in the Bishu store and I can get that through to you in 12 hours, not 24. So the hyperscalers have a tremendous amount of online and digital-based and hosted cloud-based solutions to do that. Then the other is also making sure that you are taking care of the customer experience layer. And I use Marius's example of when he bought the belt in Dar es Salaam and need to return it in Cape Town. Or going forward is having data that says, Marius bought a size 30 belt. He's now buying a size 40 belt and he doesn't look like a size 40. Marius, is this the right, are you buying it for yourself? Is this the right size, as an example? So the notion of this personalized experience can't be done, and you can't rely on people to do it because everyone has a different skill set, different levels of training, etc. So by working with hyperscalers like Microsoft and others, you're able to have pretty much off-the-shelf solutions that you can replicate from a small, medium business perspective. And believe it or not, it allows you to compete with the large multinational retailers. And I think that's the key. Don't be scared of it. Adopt it quickly. It is cost effective. And there are many different commercial models that one is able to look at to deliver those. So I think that's key for the small, medium business. Don't be scared of it. Adopt it quickly. And partners like ourselves and many others, we look at a consulting model, and then we look at a full managed service that says, let's tell you what we believe everyone else is doing, make the decision, and then we'll manage it for you. Why? So you can spend all your time selling and looking after your customers.
Fantastically put. Marius, anything that you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Wes. I think Boyd is spot on. I think I'd stretch it a bit further and say that small and medium enterprises very often have an advantage in that they can adopt cloud a lot faster and a lot more efficiently than larger enterprises. There are off-the-shelf solutions for just about any scenario that you need in terms of digitalization. I think it's proven through the fact that there are actually many new companies that is starting from a digitalization perspective and actually moving into a bricks and mortar environment from that angle. And even as a startup, they have that ability to have a digital strategy straight off the bat, and it actually gives them access to an existing market and ultimately even bricks and mortar stores. So it certainly is a bit of an advantage that you can access all these cloud-based services, as Boyd said, in a cost-effective manner. And if you're small and agile, it gives you a distinct advantage.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that contribution, Mark. Thank you very much for finding a way to be back into the action. We're talking here about the roles of tech and e-commerce for small businesses and what small businesses can do and what tools small businesses can use to also be part of this bigger conversation and to also tap into all of the power that exists within all of this, and of course the barriers to entry for them as well. Boyd already mentioning that sometimes some of them feel a little intimidated and a little scared that it feels like it's too big. I need to focus on what I'm focusing on, but then saying that no. But then in those cases when you need to be focusing on selling, let us partner with you so that we can enable you to do more of what you do while we do what we're good at. So Mark, you can also just come in here and just highlight, what tools and resources are available for small businesses to be part of this bigger conversation.
I think thanks Weza, and thanks to Eskom just for the load shedding there, and the UPS didn't make it, unfortunately. So we want to generators now, which is great. Weza, I think the key thing is that, just as I had to make a plan now, many small businesses find themselves in the same way. And what are the big challenges right now are security, and I think it was mentioned as trust by Marius earlier as well. You can solve your security problem. You can solve your scaling problem easily by using the hyperscalers that Boyd was mentioning. You can basically go as a retailer, small, medium business. You can have huge presence for literally the price of some software applications and some fiber internet access, and you can have a worldwide market. Before you were just limited to your local area. So your ability to trade is far enhanced by the whole cloud digital type environment. So usually those are the problems that are the big challenges for small medium businesses. Is how do you scale? How do you reach a wider target market? And how do you manage your distribution in your supply chain? Again, technology comes in there. With AI and machine learning and so on, you can start doing a lot more accurate predictive analytics. You can also manage your shrinkage, for instance, from a security perspective, far more effectively. And a lot of these systems are already in place to actually put those kind of solutions available. So, you know, that whole glass pipeline that I mentioned earlier, that whole way of doing that is something that I think is really, really critical going forward. You know, the other thing that I think we need to look at is within the next 2 years, IDC's research shows that about 35% of brands will be openly incentivizing for personal data with cash or rewards. So retailers will start using it, and small, medium businesses can leverage that as well, and basically capture their clients and service them on a very personalized and one-to-one basis. A lot of in marketing circles, there's always been a lot of talk about the market of one, and the marketing very specifically. That's not reality. You can actually do the analytics, do the learnings around your client, and really tailor them and take them hand in hand along that entire customer journey, from getting the interest through to the desire, through to the action, and then the payment mechanisms as well, and securing your payment mechanisms. One of the biggest problems in a small, medium business is managing your cash flow. Again, here the tools exist, and the financial institutions are very keen, as are the hyperscalers, as are the connectivity providers, to actually assist the small, medium businesses by providing enhanced applications, if you like, on top of the connectivity to make their life a lot easier. Thanks, Reza.
Great contributions there, Mark. And you're very right. You know, things like just safer ways to pay, where I am more certain that this particular payment method is going to go through, that my money is not going to disappear or be taken and so on. Those type of things also help a great deal. You know, South Africa is a place where, you know, a lot of people who are trying things for the first time are so, you know, wary of scams or phishing and all of the other elements that cast a dark cloud over e-commerce, because it's so important that, you know, people feel safe, and cybersecurity is also something that is central to this conversation as well. Guys, I would like you to just quickly give us a wrap up. You know, the last 18 months or so, from basically the start of COVID, the work from home life and everything has really done a lot to change how we do work, how we even sell, how we exchange, whether it is, you know, services, whether it is products. Everything has been impacted in a very, very severe manner. Now, as we're going back down to level 1, and we might even see level 0 at some point, where we go back to normal. Will normal still be the same? What are the advances that have happened now are going to do to the future? You know, what's the future normal going to look like? Because we're not really going to go back to normal, are we? So what do you guys think is here to stay? I'll start with Boyd, and then we'll go Marius, and then we'll go Mark.
Thanks, Weza. I think for me, this experiential, personalized experience is most certainly here to stay, and it's been rapidly accelerated. That for me is critical. Given how competitive the economic landscape is, you have to fight for every rand and every cent, and to do that, you have to fight for every customer. So I think you have to find that. The second is, I think this notion of where do I go and spend my money, this notion of conscientious buying, making certain that I buy from environments that are socially responsible, are green-based organizations, and I resonate with the brand, and making certain that you have this conscientious relationship with the brand. And I think finally, what's here to stay is that retailers are going to focus on retail. And organizations like Liquid Intelligent Technologies, with our connectivity, our cloud, our cybersecurity portfolio, our managed service portfolio, is something that we are able to take to our retail customers, partners in any industry, and provide a full end-to-end managed service. Because what is here to stay is that the market is super competitive. You have to fight for your customer, and you can't have time focusing on things that are not core to your business. Thanks, Weza.
Fantastic. Over to you, Mark. I mean, Marius, yeah, then Mark.
Thank you very much, Weza. Yeah, I think a lot of what Boyd says resonate with us as well. I think the first important part is to understand that there's no going back. I even hesitate to call it the new normal because I believe it's still evolving. And the trends that we have seen will remain and probably even accelerate. So very important will be that client experience, that client journey, the trust and the community that you build with your clients, and then with that, the whole experience of moving closer to the consumer. We've got more discerning buyers who will make more careful decisions where they buy and from whom they buy and how they access those services. And in line with that, the whole omni-channel experience, be it bricks and mortar, or be it online, or very important, mobile, will become more and more key. And enabling retailers to maximize that omni-channel communication and community building is really key for us. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you, Marius. Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Reza. Just reflecting on, I think the hybrid model is here to stay. Work from home, the whole workforce outlook, how we work, who we work with, how we engage, and the business models associated with that. All that they've changed, and they're not going to go back to what they were in 2019. We'll be constantly redefining in light of the new digital reality that we're living. Two things stand out, that there's intelligence on demand. And what that means is that you can, I think Marius referred to it earlier, where shoppers will look online and then go and pick up or buy physically. That physical, digital, as Boyd has said. Those aspects are realities, and that will accelerate. The velocity of that connectedness will increase over time. And what this means is that the whole engagement model in a retail sector has to be completely revisited. It's got to go from a responsive, advertising-driven type of environment and very, very, very mechanical, if you like, to a very anticipatory and predictive environment. And I think AI and machine learning and those things, basically smart assistance, smart analysis, and so on. That's going to help the customers on their journey. And the retail sectors is going to change significantly over the next couple of years with all these exciting developments in place.
Great stuff. So, guys, there you have it. There's so much that we can look forward to as the space really starts to grow. Whether you're a small business, a medium enterprise, or even a large corporation, there's a lot to learn and a lot to adapt to. This calls now for us to be more responsive, to be adaptable and agile, so that we can take advantage of the changing markets and the changing demands as well. Some of the key takeaways is that we have to understand that the market is now going to be very phygital. And that's our new word for the day, and that means that we need to be thinking of the omni-channel requirement necessary here, as Marius had mentioned. And it's so important that we understand that, okay, my environment needs to be a hybrid environment. I can't just talk tech for tech and take everything and replace it and replicate it on an e-commerce platform and think that's enough. But now, as Mark mentioned, that we need to move from that responsive, mechanical perspective of doing business to a more predictive environment using machine learning and artificial intelligence. And that's where, things like analytics come in and really make it even better. So we need to be analyzing our data, and so that we can have a more personal approach to how we do business, especially in the e-commerce plate. You need to be sure who buys, when do they buy, how do they buy, and what amounts of time do they spend between the next time they visit you, so that you can see how you can really start to use those insights to better understand your customer, to improve your product offering so that you can be more competitive as well. So in all of this, let our innovation and solutions be customer-centric, because how we're going to win the next dollar, the next rand in the future is by being more personal in our approach and by partnering with the strategic guys that will help you to do what you do even better, so that you can focus on what you do best and that they can just bring on those extra insights and that extra knowledge that you need to just take yourself and your product offering and, of course, your company to the next level. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasing pleasure as well as a privilege being your host today. The name is Weza that guy, and we're signing out.